Okay, so now I'm going to show you the exciting thing of working with petals to make a flower. So first of all, we're going to cut them out, then we're going to put them in the solution, then I'm going to do some more manipulating on them, then we're going to put it together. Okay, so the first stage is to cut them out. Now I've got my leather, which is really thin. You want it to be about 1 millimetre in thickness. You want it sort of nice and thin and stretchy and able to move it around. But obviously when we do a petal with it, that is going to be a little bit floppy, so we want that to stiffen up a little bit. But it's easier to work with a thinner piece and be able to manipulate that more than a thicker, harder piece that you can't really twist or pleat or do anything with. So I've got the leather here. I've got my patterns, which I will give you. So this is the larger petal, a smaller petal. Then I've got my little inside bit here. You can probably see that better on the leather. And then I've got a little polystyrene ball. If you can't find these, then you can use a bead and you can use some wire. You can attach it onto the end of a wire, or you can just find something round to be able to put inside. I quite like these because you can push things up into them, or they're quite pliable, easy to use. So that will fit nicely around it. So that's for this bit. So then we will just sort of fold that in around it and hide it, and that'll look quite nice inside. And then we'll start attaching our petals. I would use about 10 small petals and about 15 larger ones. That'll give you about 5 rows of petals and about 5 in each section. So you'll have 5 petals and another 5 petals, another 5 petals in 5 lots. You can have more than that, you can have less than that, but that sort of a starting point is a good flower. So you want it to be bigger and bigger, then that can be bigger. This is going to be more of a rosy type flower. I like being abstract and doing what I want, so I wouldn't necessarily call it a certain flower. But if you want to, work on certain flowers, then you can go into more depth after this and learn about actually making leather flowers that are called chrysanthemum or called poppy or called proper flowers names. But if you just want to make an abstract flower, then that's great as well, because you can cut your own shapes. You can have bigger petals than that. You could have sort of zigzaggy edges coming out of them. You could have big dips. You see the top here, it's a bit wavy, so you could have a big dip coming down. You can start manipulating it when you understand it a little bit more. And I also want to spray these a little bit. Spray doesn't always work particularly well on leather, because if you stretch it, then the spray won't stretch with it, so it's better to dye it. So you could use a water-based dye and actually sort of dye some of the leather. So if you've got a clear leather, not clear, but a natural coloured leather, then you could dye that, or a pinky leather, you could put a little tinge of a darker colour around the edge. But I will, for this instance, spray a little bit because I just want a little bit of a zhuzh. And you know me, I like to use some futuristic things. I like to use sprays, I like to use plastics and metals. So if you want to make them absolutely perfect, you can dye them, or you can follow what I'm going to show you and just do a little bit of a spray, but that'll be later. So we've got our pattern pieces, we've got our polystyrene ball. You can get bigger ones as well, these are fun to work with. And also I've got my solution, which is my glue base, and this is going to make this stiffer. And I've got in here straw stiffener, so it's a water-based straw millinery cinnamon stiffener. It's like a PVA mix, but it makes it harder than actual PVA. So if you use the normal child's craft PVA, it wouldn't make it hard. So we want to use the millinery PVA. Or you can use a wood PVA. This one I put in with 1 part PVA, millinery cinnamon stiffener mix with 3 parts water. So that's waiting for me in a minute. And I'm going to show you another little thing which you can actually do out of leather, because you can do this out of paper, which means you can then do it out of leather as well. And this effect could be a nice veil. So that I'm going to show you how to do out of paper, and it's the same instance with leather, and then you could have a leather veil coming out, imagine that. All your cut off bits you want to keep as well. So bits like this, I cut off my, which one was I doing yesterday? The button one yesterday. So we cut that off, and I've just left that to the side because it's quite nice, a sort of abstract pieces that could go on later. Maybe we could cut little leaves out of them. We could scrunch them up into an abstract flower and put something in the middle. All sorts. I just love all of these creases. You can also spray them a little bit, or if you could have, if they were a cream or a pink, then you could have dip them in a bit of dye as well around the edges, and that'll give a nice two-tone effect. Right, so let's get started. So we've got this one and this one. So I'm going to use the most part of my leather. I don't want to waste any of it. So if I can get any of these out of a small part, I will. Also, we're going to do a big leaf later, so I want a section for my leaf, so I'm going to use all that for my leaf. So I'm just thinking about exactly what I'm going to use and where. Now we've left that in there for about 5 minutes, I'm just going to take these out.